All right. Well, hello everybody. My name is Jochem Herber. I'm a lecturer at the International Creative Business Program at the HU University of Applied Sciences in the wonderful city of Utrecht. Today I'm going to do a short interview with Donald Bullers, who I would like to call it a new internet entrepreneur. And we will get to the point where we actually will learn what a new internet entrepreneur does and what they do. Donny is involved in the World Economic Forum. He is co-responsible for a company called Tuum Tech, and he's been in this Web4 space for a very long time. So I'm very happy to have you in this call, Donny. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before we start, I'm very curious to hear your story. So how did you land, in this whole decentralized space, and how did it start?
Let's see. So back in 2017, I first came across cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. I'd heard about it years prior, but I really started taking interest in 2017. And I didn't get too involved until I came across Rom Chen, who's the visionary and the founder of a project, Elastos Foundation. And I just watched one of his meetups and his speeches, and I was like, man, this guy, he gets it. He has a vision of countless years of operating systems and a vision for where we're going to go. And I decided I need to get involved if I could in any way. And I reached out to the project probably multiple times before I got interest, and just got my hands involved on the most basic of levels, just helping out with initial meetups and branding and content, things that I can help with. And it evolved into now 3+ years of building development teams and software.
Wow, that's super interesting, and particularly the big vision and where it's going to go. I will ask you a couple of questions about that topic as well. Let's first go very much meta level, because you are involved in the World Economic Forum, which is quite unique. In my view, it is kind of like the highest body that is involved in policy making and innovation, obviously. And you talk a lot about if I'm not mistaken, data and digital identities. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you talk about with the World Economic Forum and what the hot topics are that you discuss there?
Yeah, so the World Economic Forum is massive. It spans so many things beyond just what we're going to focus on with data policies, things like that. And it's pretty unique for myself and Elastos to be involved. It's at an interesting time, and I think it's a perfect time for us to be involved, because the discussions shifted a lot more towards this new industrial revolution, this new Web3, the talk of decentralization. And where we came involved was a couple months ago, and they had already drafted a pretty extensive white paper on data policy. So now I'm actively involved in that specific task force. And in the next few weeks, I'll be participating as a co-author in their upcoming events. And what we're trying to do is just focus heavily on data, how data is used, how data is going to be governed, exchanged. They have some pilot projects going on with different countries in Japan and Colombia, and just testing out this data exchange model. So we look at how governments are going to handle this, how enterprises, institutions, and then I kind of come at it from an individual perspective, the users, because what we do at Tuum Technologies and Elastos, a lot of it's about empowering users. So one task force is data policy. We're going to discuss different policies that could be put in place, but also governance. Like there may need to be a global governance of data one day. It's not controlled by an enterprise or one specific country, because everything's becoming more exchanged, and it's decentralized around the world. And then beyond that, I'm on another task force. It's task intermediaries, and that's for trusted digital agents. So kind of going through discussions of who should be these trusted third parties that are handling the data. Is it going to be a government? Is it going to be an institution? Is it going to be AI, tech? There's a lot of this stuff that needs to be talked about now ahead of it being put into place. So there's a lot that we talk about specific to that. World Economic Forum, again, is massive. They're having their Davos event, starts next week. Global leaders from everywhere, business leaders from everywhere, and we're involved, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. And the whole topic of data and data exchange is
Mhm.
such a fascinating area to be in, right?
Yeah.
You already coined Web 3, which kind of like brings the impression that we're now sitting on a Web 2 or an old web maybe.
Mhm.
So that takes me to my next question, because in your opinion, why would we need a new web, and what are the 3 or maybe the 5 biggest challenges that we face on the Web 2 that we live on today?
Well, there's a lot of challenges actually, and a lot of it's not apparent to people that are on it today unless you take a step back and you actually start to think about it. So one topic that's actually come up a lot in the past couple of years are data monopolies. So you have your Googles, your Facebooks, these hoarders of data, where the internet was originally supposed to be decentralized, but it's become more siloed. So the Googles and the Facebooks and all these platforms are kind of trying to take your screen time. They're trying to take your data, and that's how they're able to monetize it. And that's not it's not healthy. So that's one major issue. Authenticity. That's something that we're focusing on at Tuum Tech. You have anonymous users, you have bots, you have fake news, you have things that are running rampant on the internet today, and it's not positive. You may have a lot of users that want to remain anonymous, which is fine. There'll be parts of the internet for that. But whenever you start to manipulate the way that people are behaving on the internet through the use of bots and accounts that you may believe is a legitimate person, and it's not. So that's not healthy as well. Security, that's been an issue forever. You have all your data that's being stored in these centralized databases, and these companies have complete control of what you're putting online, and it's a central location for a hack. That happens. Um, you know, you can look at the stats. It's every day. There's hacks happening, and that's not healthy. And then another component I'd like to touch on is social networks themselves. There's a guy, Jaron Lanier, and he's famously called them behavior modification empires. They're no longer social platforms because their sole purpose is to keep you on their platforms as long as possible, and they manipulate your use, and that's not healthy. So those are a few of the core pieces that I feel can be resolved and fixed with a more decentralized web, and issues that we need to address today.
Yeah, that is so fascinating, and these are giant topics and problems to be solved, right? I mean,
They
it's
all individually, each one is a giant topic.
yeah, absolutely, and that also begs the question that how is it possible that we as a society let this happen? I mean, have there been no incentives before to try to address these big issues?
Well, I don't know if I would say that we let it happen. It's been happening for a very long time, and it's kind of it's something that's out of our control because you don't know otherwise. And whenever those that are in control are forcing these things upon us, then we don't know any difference. So now it's kind of time to start to pay attention and to make some changes. We were initially supposed to be on the internet as both producers and consumers of content, and that didn't happen. We've kind of shifted to where a few very large platforms are siloing everything, and it's not how it's supposed to have been. And really, it goes back to what I said earlier about the way that data is handled, and the way that screen time is handled, and the way that people want to grow their user bases and get as many accounts as they can, and all of that has created a damaging model. And a lot of it goes back to the social platforms whenever they introduce their ad revenue models. A lot of applications have spun off, probably most, from the way of giving free access to their applications and creating revenue through ads. And whenever there's ad revenue, you need to have the users seeing the ads. and you need to have the data from the users to provide them the most relevant ads and keep them on your platform. So it's kind of created a tsunami of these other applications that mimic that model, and it's not healthy. And what we're doing at Tuum Technologies particularly is trying to go back to more of pushing a way for users to have control of their data so that they can monetize it themselves, but also the applications should be going into more of a model where it is paid for the use of the platforms, and it's free of bots, it's free of ads revenues, and there's other methods to do that. And that's why crypto is pretty cool, because there's ways to use tokens, and there's a lot of different models that can be produced where the users are actually participating with the platforms rather than just being bombarded with ads and things that happen from using their data, knowing everything about them.
That is so fascinating. And then you already mentioned Big Vision by Ron Chen as well, right? So maybe it's fun to do a short thought experiment. And let's say that we fast forward 20 years or so, and then my big question is, how will things be different? So how will we be communicating with each other, and what are the fundamental differences between 20 years from now and how we do it now?
Yeah, well, it's hard to know what's going to happen in 20 years. Going back to Rong Chen, his vision, this was over 30 years ago, and he's been thinking about this. So that's very unique, that we would actually come to a head right here, where that now is what he talked about a long time ago. But I'd like to go back 20 years, to think about where we've come from on the internet, just to start to think about where we can go. So 20 years ago, let's say Google was just getting off the ground. It's nothing like it is today, and how massive. YouTube and platforms like that weren't even a thought then. And look at where they are now. So you can start to think about, okay, so how are things going to look in 20 years? I think that 20 years ago was a boom era for the internet. All these applications and platforms we use today were just getting thought about and taking off. So I think that right now we're in a boom era of a decentralized web. You look at what's happening around the world, and this shift of users going through different platforms, trying to find peer-to-peer communication channels, different groups that are getting kicked off of platforms for whatever reason. There's a need now for a decentralized web and a new structure. And I think that we have a great opportunity, fortunately or not, that we've had with the pandemic. We at Tuum thought that we had a couple more years before we get to this point, 5, 10 years, and it all happened in the span of a year. Everybody was forced to work remotely. You had to come up with new means to communicate through Zoom and these other channels. We've kind of all started to realize that, hey, that things do need to change now. And like I said, fortunately or not, that's where we're at. We need to have that peer-to-peer communication that's not going through central siloed databases and companies. We need to have that exchange of data. We need to have a different structure of how data is handled and exchanged. And the more power has to go back to the users, because there's so much that you can do that we could touch on later. And I think that that's going to be where we're heading. We're going to have more accountability for each individual, kind of like in the real world. You have accountability for who you are and what you do, and it's kind of been a little bit more freedom online that I think that we need to go back to realizing that we're spending more time in our digital world than we are in our real world. And that's very important.
Yeah, those are a couple of really fantastic points. I've got another question, and it almost feels like this question is already a little bit outdated, because you touched upon a very big societal shift where people went from a lot of face-to-face to everything remote. And with that, we became more aware of our own data privacy, for example. And still, every now and then, I see people, young students of mine as well, that claim that they don't really care that their data is being owned by the big corporates. So they don't care that other people are making money out of their data. So do you have a special message to that group particularly?
I think that there may be a few cases where that's okay. And that's fine. That there are going to be some chances where People may find better benefit being on a centralized application, because decentralization it doesn't solve every issue. But the reality is that people are going to be far better off when they do have that ownership, and they don't know that yet. But the reasons are, for many, there's actually several different reasons. One thing that we focus on heavy is digital identity. So today, users have about 70 to 80 different usernames and passwords across all these different applications. Now we have over half the world is using social platforms. So what does that mean? That means that you're duplicating your information many times over on the internet, and that's creating more and more opportunities for your information to be hacked. You're giving up more data that you maybe wouldn't want to do otherwise, and it's going to all these different entities. So if you can shift that to more of a model where you are controlling your data and you are giving up the rights to who accesses that, when they access it, and how, that's going to be very important. We're building an application or web platform now where you control your profile and you can take that with you. So doesn't it make more sense if you're having your own profile in one location that you've created, self-sovereign, you have custody over, and then you can take it with you to the other platforms? What's the reason for giving it up to these other applications? And the reason has been because those platforms want control of your data. They want control of your time, and they want you on their platforms or apps so that they can generate some revenue. And you can still use these type of platforms in a decentralized way, but you just have to shift who's in control, and it has to go back to the users. And then one thing that we haven't reached yet is that we are very soon going to get into a monetization where users can, once they control that data, they can begin to monetize it. And it goes back to things that we've talked about at the World Economic Forum. What if there's governance models where you're taxed on your data, so that these platforms have to give up some type of tax credit to their users, and that benefits you in a way financially? Or going back to the pandemic, what if it was more beneficial for your country to know if you were sick or not, but you actually felt okay giving up that data, not in a way where you think they may manipulate you in some way. You just let them know whether you're okay or not in a encrypted fashion. Then maybe there's some entities that would want to pay you for that data. So there's a lot of cases where it's going to be a huge shift and beneficial to the users. Today, they think that Facebook's fun, it's free, I don't care what they do with my data. But there's going to be a lot of global changes in the next couple of years that are truly going to put that on its head.
I find that fantastic, and you already coined some really interesting topics. Being able to monetize from your own data is huge, right? I mean, whenever there's a social media platform that allows me to actually earn from the content that I create. I did Facebook a couple of years ago, but I'll definitely go back if they enter such a model. It could be very interesting. So then let's talk about what you and your team have been up to, because you gave some hints already that I find really interesting. So what have you been building, and with what purpose?
Okay, so we can go back to kind of what I said about being with the Elastos Foundation for a little over 3 years. What Elastos is building is they have a suite of open source products that are used to develop a decentralized web. And what is a decentralized web, and what does that mean? So there's a couple of core components that we focus on at Tuum Technologies. They have a carrier peer-to-peer network. So that's going to resolve the issue of having all your data siloed, like I've mentioned before. So you're working in a network that's peer-to-peer. Individuals can have their own nodes all over the world, and they communicate in a decentralized way. So that's one core component that's already built that we use in some of the tech that we've built at Tuum. And then there's decentralized data storage. That's another key piece to beginning to monetize your data. You have to be able to store it in a decentralized way. Digital identity is another big piece, and that's self-sovereign IDs, which means that you can create an ID for yourself, on the blockchain that's not given to you by government, by a company. You have complete control over it. You have custody over your security words. So you have that piece, but then also you can assign different attributes to it and get verifiable credentials. So I can have a DID, put my name, profile, a picture profile. I can put my age, countless different attributes, and then verify it. I could use third parties or other individuals to verify that data. And then the last thing that Elastos has been doing is smart contracts. So at Tuum Technologies, which started about a year ago, where myself and a few others had been working with Elastos, we kind of spun off our own entity, and now we have over 10 individuals where we still work on the core infrastructure pieces, some of them. We're helping out with an identity application that's built into their core app, ElastOS, which kind of has that DID, verifiable credentials piece. But also we're working on some of the SDKs for the web. So we're still helping out with the DID for the web and the Hive, which is their decentralized storage for the web. And we've helped out with some other applications like a hyper messenger where we can chat decentralized. So our main focus is taking that technology that's been built for 3 years and providing it to the clients. So we're building some client-side products. We're really focused on the user experience, because the shift from traditional tech to decentralized tech has its roadblocks, its difficulties. There's some things that are different that you have to understand, and we want to put that as best we can into products that users are familiar with, but they actually start to dip their toes into a decentralized world.
That is awesome. And you talked about some of the technologies that Elastos is creating, including carrier technology, peer-to-peer communications, verifiable credentials, smart contracts, and you explained why they matter. And obviously the decentralized storage, which is a huge topic by itself already. My next question would be more focused on Tuum Tech. And what are the next products, the client-facing products that you will be releasing in the next year or so that my students will already be able to play around with between now and end of the year, for example?
Okay. So yeah, Tuum Technologies, like I said, we're focusing a lot on the client-side products, and it's been a multi-step process because we had to first work on some of the non-exciting back-end applications that help make these products easier for users. So one thing that we built early on was an application called Assist. And one thing that you'll find whenever you're starting to use decentralized applications in the blockchain, that there's fees involved, and you need to pay fees for things to be published to the blockchain. So what Assist does is it makes it easier for traditional users. We cover these fees, and then the user can use the application just like they would in a traditional sense without having to seek out tokens and use wallets and payments. So that's one thing that we have in the back end, and that can be expanded to do other things like support with smart contracts, which we might move into. Another application we built that's generally used in the back end is called Vouch, and that's your KYC verification piece. So all these verifiable credentials that we talk about, whenever you have different platforms and applications that are wanting to give users their DIDs or their decentralized identity, and they want to verify different things, and they want to publish things in the blockchain, that's where Vouch and Assist come in. So they can use these in the back end, and they can start to make it easier for users. So what we've done now since then is we're trying to build a platform that's called Profile. And that kind of puts together a culmination of things that Elastos has built over 3 years, plus Tuum has built over the past year. So we take those different pieces, Vouch, Assist in the back end, verifiable credentials, the decentralized storage, and we're giving a web-based platform to the world that's going to be, I would say, is most similar to what you're familiar with as LinkedIn. So what users can do, they can have their public profile page URL on the web, just like you see on LinkedIn. It's kind of like your resume. And with that, you're going to have verified pieces. So you're going to have your own self-sovereign ID. You own it. You create it on the blockchain. No one can take it down, take it off, take it from you. You could take it with you wherever you want. And each of the pieces can be verified. So you can have verification badges like you're familiar with on your usernames on social media, where you may get a Twitter verification. But this is going to be for every component. And that solves a very important issue today, where I could go on LinkedIn and say I work anywhere and do anything and I went to any school, and no one knows otherwise. So it's really trying to create an authenticity on the web by allowing people that want to present themselves in a real world way have credibility and engage with others. And so users in a couple weeks, we'll start to invite them onto the platform in an alpha. We hope to go into a beta phase probably around second quarter. And we're just going to roll this out as in a not too quick way, but enough of a way that we can get it out to users as soon as possible, because there really is a need right now. You can just see with deplatforming and just fake news and a lot of things that are happening in the world that are creating a rift. Once you start to have platforms like Profile, you start to have reduced competition through authenticity. So we're going to present that soon. We're excited. The full team's working on it, and hope to have more information about it soon.
That is wonderful, and I can already see how Profile can be implemented, right? With then also Vouch and Assist, for example, probably working at the back. So many of my students are entrepreneurs, and they design decentralized platforms. At least is one of the things that they do.
Right.
And with Profile, if you have a decentralized platform for the music industry, for example, or where you trade art or stuff like that, the moment your artists actually have a verified identity via Profile, then they gain direct credibility on this decentralized platform. That's kind of like one of the use cases for these kind of applications, right?
Yeah, that's actually going to be one of the big use cases. So we don't want to start to provide everything inside this one application. We don't want it to be the combination of LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all for a decentralized world. We want this to be the central hub for your digital identity on the web. And what that means is you can have a full, every traditional application shifted to a decentralized web using Profile. So today you log in with Facebook or you log in with Google, you can log in with Profile, and that's going to be the goal. So you have your central profile, your hub, your verification pieces, where there may be a financial platform that only cares that you are who you are and your age to restrict you. And that goes back to websites that are restricting to 18 and older. You don't have to tell them when your birth date is, but Profile tells them that you're older than 17 years old. You don't have to have that pop-up click. That it doesn't mean anything. Anybody can just click and say I am who I am, but there's going to be legitimate ways to actually do that without having to go through this manual process or this consent and trust, where you go to every website now and says accept the cookies, accept this. What if you have these platforms like Profile that already has it preset inside of the platform that you agree or disagree, or you are who you are, you're not, and then you can use that as a central hub on every other application to verify certain pieces. And that takes out a lot of the work that's involved for these platforms. It takes out a lot of the cost. It makes it easier for users. It gives control to the users. And also that presents a way to be able to use that data, monetize it on these data exchanges. If you have that data that's stored on your profile and then you can access a data exchange that's developed, it's all there. So there's a lot that's going to be able to be done with it.
It's fascinating. That's absolutely fantastic. I have two more questions for you. The first one is a bit of a question of conscience as well, because I'm really curious to hear from you that besides the Illustros, what other projects get you excited?
Well, I've been pretty heavy into Elastos for many years, so I don't do too much research outside of what we're actually doing. But I will say there are a lot of platforms and applications you're going to see coming out right now that are focused on a lot of things that we are doing. One that I have been watching is Microsoft Ion. So we do a lot of our work focused on the DID, and that's the decentralized identifier. And that they're having their own DID, which I think just released this week, their first code on GitHub. But they're going to have that DID coming from one of the largest software companies in the world, and that's a big deal. And how do they use that? It's probably going to be mainly enterprise focused, where they can just plug it into their applications like Authenticator, like LinkedIn, different things that they're already associated with and have large user bases. But that's going to create credibility for DIDs, and Elastos is right there with them. We've been part of the W3C just with other DID producers like Microsoft. So it'll be interesting to see if they can make way. I think we're going to see a lot of projects that are specific to crypto, or like the tokenization of things, or specific to traditional tech. That's going to be a lot of the things that we deal with the World Economic Forum, and some of these applications that want to provide identities to those that don't have identity. Those in the world that may not have those different forms of documentation that they can easily do with the DID and the tech that we have. So I'm basically, I'd say I'm most interested in the projects that are similar to what we're doing. We want to bridge the worlds between traditional and crypto. I haven't been too heavy focused on ones that are just focused on crypto, and then you have all the platforms that are kind of trying to do a centralized approach in a traditional world. I'm not too fond of that either. I want to see ones where they can bring in users from a traditional use case and perspective, but give them some of the benefits of decentralization, kind of like what Elastos and Tuum Technologies provides.
That's very interesting. And then my last question, for people like us, so my students, my colleagues, or anyone interested in this very new innovative topic, what would you advise us to do to get to know more about this new world? What should we do in order to take that next step into your world as a new internet entrepreneur?
Well, the quickest and easiest thing, even though this goes against what I've been saying about social platforms, I would say is get on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter, Donald Bullers, and follow those that I follow, because there's a really good cryptocurrency decentralized network of individuals that are speaking real time on Twitter. So I'd say jump right in, follow me and them, and learn about that. But also there's a couple of books that people can grab to start to get a little bit of a feel for where we're going. I'd say one that I read is Blockchain Revolution, and that's by Don Tapscott. And then also Life After Google by George Gilder. Those are both two good books to kind of start to think about, this next web and how blockchain can become involved. And then the social media piece goes back to the Jaron Lanier that I mentioned earlier. He had a TED Talk, and that was called How Do We Remake the Internet, I believe. And I'd say Google that. It's like 15 minutes. It's a great video to watch. And then the last thing is actually try and use the tech. So we developed a website, www.getdids.com. And you can go there right now in a few minutes. You can create your own DID. There's not much that you can do with it yet, but that DID allows you access to these other products that we are building, like Profile. We have a hyper communication messenger, a decentralized Twitter, stuff like that. You'll need that DID component to start to use them. So go try it out, make one, just feel the whole process, and I would say do all that.
Awesome. Well, Donnie, I think that we're at the end of this interview. Thank you so much for this. It's such an inspiration for me as well. And it's super valuable to my students, my colleagues. And thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your insights with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.